From the get-go, I knew what I was about. Even as a little kid, my dolls and teddy bears were the healthiest on the block, all thanks to Dr. Julia. I'd wrap their tiny limbs in bandages made from torn pillowcases, and I'd cook up medicine from crushed berries and water. There, I'd coo to my stuffed bear, Teddy. Doc Julia will fix you right up. He'd sit there, all button eyes and floppy ears, looking like he believed every word. My parents caught on quick to my antics. Every evening, they'd sit on the rickety couch while I explained my latest surgery or miracle cure. My dad would raise his eyebrows and say, "So, Dr. Julia, will Teddy make it through the night?" With hands on my hips, I'd assure him, "Dad, Teddy's gonna be right as rain. Just you watch." By the time I hit school, my sights were set on real human medicine. I signed up for the first aid club as soon as I could scribble my name on the sign-up sheet. I soaked up everything like a sponge at those meetings, from bandaging sprains to performing CPR on dummies. "Hey, Julia, take it easy there. That dummy's already dead," my buddy Mark would joke as I pumped away at chest compressions. "Better practice on the dead one than need it and mess up on a live one," I'd shoot back, all focused and serious, even then. High school flew by, and it was no surprise to anyone when I said I was going off to university for nursing. My folks weren't exactly swimming in cash, but they made it happen. Mom took on extra shifts at the diner, and Dad did some odd jobs on weekends. The day I left, Mom hugged me tight, her apron still dusted with flour. "Make us proud, Jules. Not that you haven't already," she whispered, teary-eyed. "I will, Mom. And I'll come back and fix up all those cuts and burns from the diner," I promised, trying to lighten the mood. University was a whole new ballgame. I chose one in a city so different from our sleepy little town that it might as well have been another planet. I stayed on after graduation, working first in a public clinic. That place was a madhouse, always bustling, always something to do. I loved it, though. Loved the grit and hustle, loved the feeling of actually making a difference. "Julia, we need you in room 4, stat," my supervisor would call out. On cue, I'd sprint down the hall, my nurse's shoes squeaking on the linoleum floor. "On it," I'd yell back, ready for whatever waited behind that door. But, after a few years, the itch to do something more crept up on me. That's when I stumbled into the world of cosmetology. It wasn't a far leap, really, still helping people, just in a different way. I took courses at night, aced them, and snagged a license. Before I knew it, I was working at a swanky private clinic, trading bandages for beauty creams and fillers. It was another kind of chaos, less about life and death, more about beauty and confidence. But even that wasn't enough after a while. I wanted my name on the door, wanted control over how things were done. So, I did the craziest thing yet, I took out a loan and opened my own place. Just a small office to start, but it was mine. All mine. My days became a blur of clients, treatments, and endless paperwork. Nights and weekends were swallowed up by marketing plans and budget balancing. Friendships boiled down to quick texts and even quicker coffee runs. "Girl, when you gonna take a break?" Annie, a friend from nursing school, would ask during our rare meetups. "When I'm dead, probably," I'd laugh, though the thought wasn't too far from the truth. So there I was, knee-deep in my dream, making it happen one long day at a time. It was tough, tougher than I'd thought, but it was worth it. Every new client, every successful treatment, they all added up. I was building something that mattered, at least, to me. Life's funny, you know? Just when you think you've got it all sorted, it throws you a curveball. For me, that curveball was Michael. I met him at a bash Annie dragged me to. The kind where the music's too loud, the drinks are too strong, and I'm wondering what I'm even doing there. But then, there he was, leaned against the bar with a smirk that could stop traffic. "Hey, you look like you'd rather be anywhere but here," he chuckled, sliding over with a couple of beers in hand. I couldn't help but laugh, raising an eyebrow. "That obvious, huh?" "Only to a fellow sufferer. I'm Michael, by the way," he said, handing me a beer. Julia, I replied, taking the drink. We clinked bottles, and that was it. We talked all night about everything, work, life, our crazy dreams. Turned out, he was a graphic designer, a creative soul, but with a love for the simple things, just like me. Fast forward 2 years, and we're picking out rings. Life with him was easy, like a Sunday morning. His mom, Linda, was a real gem too, helping us plan the wedding like she was born for it. "Oh, honey, these flowers will look divine with the tablecloths," Linda would say, bustling around with that planner of hers that never left her side. "Thanks, Linda, I'd be lost without you," I'd admit, meaning every word. She had an eye for detail and a way of making everything seem effortless. The big day came and went in a blur of vows, laughter, and dancing. Michael moved into my rented apartment shortly after. We sat down, spread all our bills and dreams on the kitchen table, and figured out a game plan like two generals before a battle. "I'll handle the everyday stuff, groceries, utilities, the works. You just focus on knocking out that business loan," Michael proposed, all serious and businesslike. "Sounds like a plan," I agreed, relieved to have him on board with the finances. We even started talking about saving up for a house, maybe a couple of kids down the line. Everything was clicking into place. But then, things got weird with Linda. She started acting all distant and cold, a total 180 from the wedding planner extraordinaire I knew. No more invites over for Sunday dinner, no calls, just radio silence. "Babe, what's up with your mom? Did I do something wrong?" I finally asked Michael one evening, after weeks of getting the cold shoulder. He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Look, Julia, well, she's got some health issues, mental health stuff. It's making her act out. It's not you, I promise. Should I talk to her, try to smooth things over?" I suggested, though the thought of confronting Linda made my stomach twist. No, let's just give her space. I don't want you caught up in her drama," Michael insisted, his tone final. I was relieved, to be honest. Dealing with in-law drama on top of running a business was not how I envisioned married life. So, I backed off, focusing on my clients and that mountain of a loan I was determined to conquer. A year into our marriage, and the sweet setup Michael and I had was crumbling. He came up to me one evening, looking all kinds of serious. "Julia, listen, Mom's not doing great. Her health's gone downhill fast. I need to help her out," he started, avoiding my eyes. "And by help her out, you mean?" I prodded, already dreading the answer. "I mean financially. I gotta take care of her bills for a bit," he said, as if it was just a minor change in plans. "A bit? Michael, what does that mean for us? For our plans?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "It means I need you to cover our stuff. Just for a while, babe, I promise," he said, with a look that meant he was pleading. So, there I was, thrown into covering everything. Rent, utilities, groceries, you name it, I paid it. My days at the office stretched longer and longer. I skipped lunches, worked through weekends, took every client I could get my hands on. One night, I called my folks, voice nearly breaking. "Hey, Dad, it's me. Things are a bit tight right now. Would you mind helping out a bit?" "Of course, sweetheart. We'll send a little something your way," Dad said, his voice full of worry. This went on for over a year. I managed to pay off the loan from my office. It was mine, all mine, but the victory felt hollow. I was bone-tired, running on fumes. One evening, I couldn't hold it in any longer. "Michael, this temporary thing has been over a year. I'm burned out. It's too much." He looked at me, really looked at me, for the first time in months. "I'll get a second job. I'll sort it out," he said, finally showing some spine. True to his word, he got that second job, but it was like trading one problem for another. Now, he was never home, and when he was either too tired to talk or too stressed to be the man I married. Months rolled by, and nothing changed. The money he gave me for the house was a joke, barely enough to cover a week's groceries. "We need to talk, Michael. This isn't working. Where's all your money going?" I demanded one night, frustration boiling over. "I'm doing everything I can, Julia. All my money? It's going to Mom, to her care. You know that." He shot back, voice rising. "That's not good enough. We have our own life, our own bills. What about us?" I yelled back. He paused, then dropped a bombshell. "Maybe it's time to think about selling your office. We could use that money." "Sell my office? Are you out of your mind? That's my dream, Michael. My everything." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "It's just money, Julia. We can start over, do something else," he argued, not getting it at all. "Just money? No, Michael. That office is me, it's my hard work, my passion." "You want me to sell my soul too?" I snapped, each word sharp as a knife. Our home became a war zone after that. Nights filled with shouting matches, days filled with silence. He'd slam doors, I'd throw pillows. It was ugly, real ugly. "You don't see it, do you? I'm busting my back here, for us, for my mom," he'd yell during our fights. "For us? When's the last time you did something for us, Michael?" "I'm carrying us all on my back and it's breaking, damn it." I'd yell right back. The tension was thick, choking. I loved him, I really did. But I was starting to wonder if that love was enough to keep patching up the cracks that kept spreading through our life like wildfire. The day was dragging like it had lead in its shoes, and I was set for a long afternoon at the office when, out of the blue, I got a call. One of my regulars had to cancel. Annoyed but secretly relieved, I decided to head home early for a change. As I turned the key and pushed open the door, there was Michael, mid-living room, looking like he'd been caught in some secret ritual. In his hands, a stark black morning suit. "What's going on, Michael? Why the suit?" I asked, dropping my bag by the door, confusion written all over my face. His mouth opened and closed, his eyes darting away before he managed to spit it out. "It's my mom, Julia. She passed away last night." The news hit like a sucker punch. Despite everything, Linda had been family. "Oh, Michael, I'm so sorry. When's the funeral?" "Tomorrow," he muttered, still not meeting my eyes. Something was off in his tone, a bitterness that didn't sit right with me. "I'll come with you. We'll get through this together," I said, stepping closer, reaching out to touch his arm. He flinched, stepping back as if I'd slapped him. "No. You're not coming. Mom made it clear, she didn't want you there. In her last request, she said no." I froze, hurt slicing through me. "What do you mean? Why wouldn't she want me there?" Without a word, he shuffled through his pockets, pulled out a crumpled piece of paper, and handed it over. The note was scrawled in a shaky hand, nothing like the elegant script I remembered from the birthday cards Linda sent me. It bluntly said, "Julia is not to attend my funeral." The rest of the day, I was in a fog. Hurt, confused, angry. After Michael left, claiming he needed to arrange things for the funeral, I dug up an old box from our closet. It was stuffed with every card Linda had ever sent me. I laid them out on the kitchen table, side by side with the funeral note. The differences were glaring. My heart raced, something was very wrong here. That evening, I moved around like a robot, rescheduling my appointments for the week. I wasn't going to let this go. I needed answers. Was it grief making him act out? Or something darker, something deeper? By the time I crawled into bed, my mind was made up. I'd be at that funeral tomorrow, hidden in the back if need be. I needed to say goodbye to Linda, or at least understand why she'd turn against me without a word. Whatever it took, I was going to unravel this mystery. The morning air was crisp as I slipped out the door, telling Michael I was headed to work. Instead, I nestled into my car parked a block away, the engine idling softly as I watched our apartment door. Michael emerged a few minutes later, all decked out in his morning suit, his face a mask of somber grace. As he drove off, I waited an extra beat, ensuring he didn't spot me, before heading in the opposite direction towards Linda's place. Driving felt surreal, like I was moving through a thick fog, every turn and stop sign a reminder of the bizarre turn my life had taken. I was supposed to be mourning a woman I respected, not playing detective. Yet here I was, fueled by doubt and a gnawing need for the truth. I arrived at Linda's house expecting to find a gathering, cars parked along the curb, somber faces, maybe even the distant sound of a eulogy being rehearsed. But nothing. The street was painfully quiet, no signs of a funeral or any gathering. Puzzled, I checked the time, thinking maybe I got it wrong. After waiting 10 tense minutes with no one showing up, I decided to ring the bell, just in case. When the door swung open, there stood Linda, very much alive, staring back at me. My heart leaped to my throat, and I couldn't hold back a startled scream. Linda jumped back, equally shocked. "Julia, what on earth are you doing here? Why are you screaming?" Catching my breath, I managed. "Michael, he said you were dead. That today was your funeral." Her face twisted from confusion to horror. "What, dead? I'm right here." "Call him, Julia. Call Michael now and find out what this nonsense is about." Before I could pull out my phone, it buzzed with a notification. Michael had started a live stream on Instagram. I clicked the link, my hands trembling. There he was, standing in a cemetery, his face somber as he accepted condolences from a small crowd gathered around a grave. "What in the world?" I muttered, the scene unfurling on my screen making less and less sense. Linda peered over my shoulder, her expression hardening as she watched. "We need to go there. Now." I nodded, too shocked to speak. We both scrambled for our things. "Grab your purse, Linda. I'll wait in the car," I said, my voice barely a whisper over the pounding in my chest. As Linda and I drove to the funeral, the car was thick with a tension you could cut with a knife. I kept glancing over at her, watching her face shift through confusion, anger, and sadness, all swirling around like a storm. It was me who broke the silence. "Linda, why did Michael say you were sick?" She turned to look at me, her eyes sharp. "Sick? I haven't been sick a day since Michael was a boy. What's he been telling you?" I swallowed, feeling my stomach twist into knots. "He said you were getting worse, that he needed to help you. He's been taking our money, saying it was going towards your medical bills." Linda's face flushed a deep red. "Medical bills? That lying?" She cut herself off, taking a deep breath. "Julia, I gave him money because he told me you were struggling. Said your business was failing and you were drowning in debt." "My business? Failing? It's the only thing that's been keeping us afloat," I exclaimed, feeling betrayed all over again. "He told me you wanted nothing to do with me, that you disliked me." Linda shook her head, her voice thick with emotion. "I never said those things. I've missed our talks. He told me you wanted space, that you couldn't handle the stress of our relationship." By the time we arrived at the cemetery, we were a united front, ready to confront whatever Michael was entangled in. We kept to the edges of the gathered crowd, not wanting to draw attention to ourselves. From a distance, we could see Michael, standing solemnly by a gravesite draped in flowers. "Let's find out what's going on here," I whispered to Linda, and we approached a group of mourners standing away from the main cluster. "Excuse me," I said, my voice low. "We're a bit lost. Can you tell us whose funeral this is?" A middle-aged woman looked at us with sad eyes. "It's a tragedy, really. Young woman, been sick for a long time. Passed away too soon. That man over there." She nodded towards Michael. "He's her husband. Poor soul, they were only married a year." Linda and I exchanged a glance, shock registering on both our faces. "And her family?" Linda asked, her voice steady, despite the tremor I knew she felt. "They're devastated, planning to leave everything to him, as they were very close," another bystander chimed in. We thanked them, stepping back to process the bombshell. Michael had a whole other life, one where he played the grieving widower to a woman none of us knew. The deceit was staggering. As the funeral procession started to move, Linda gripped my arm. "We need to follow this through, see where he goes after this." "Agreed," I said, my voice grim. "We can't confront him yet, not until we know everything." We got back into the car, trailing the procession from a safe distance. My mind was racing, every piece of the puzzle so far, painting a picture so ugly I could hardly believe it was real. "We'll get to the bottom of this, Linda. Whatever it takes," I promised her as we drove. She nodded, her face set in determination. Linda and I pulled up behind the last of the cars in the funeral procession, parking a little way down the street from a large, beautiful house with its door swung wide open. We exchanged a glance, steeling ourselves for whatever lay ahead, and then we walked towards the house, the murmur of voices guiding us to the living room. Inside, a man, older, with a somber, dignified air, was speaking to Michael, his voice thick with grief. "You're our son now, and everything we have, our home, our business, it will all be yours." It's what she would have wanted after everything. Michael, his face wet with tears, looked up and responded with a choked voice. "Thank you. I've lost my parents long ago. Being part of your family means everything to me." Linda couldn't take it anymore. She burst into the room, her voice loud and clear, cutting through the thick air. "When exactly did I die, Michael?" The room fell silent. Heads turned. Michael's face went from sorrow to shock in an instant. "Mom, what are you doing here?" I stepped up beside Linda, my own anger flaring. "Yeah, Michael, explain to us all how you could be married again when your wife is very much alive." The elderly couple looked from Michael to us, confusion etching their faces. "What is this? Who are these people?" the woman asked, her voice trembling. Linda took a deep breath, her eyes never leaving Michael's face. "I'm his mother, and this is his wife. His first and only legal wife, as far as we knew." The revelation hit like a thunderclap. The room erupted with voices, the couple demanding an explanation from Michael. He stumbled over his words, trying to maintain his composure. "There's been a misunderstanding." "No, Michael, no more lies," Linda shouted, stepping forward. "Tell them the truth." Under the weight of so many eyes, Michael's facade crumbled. "I needed the money," he blurted out. I lost big at cards. It was supposed to be temporary, just until I could pay back the debts." The couple recoiled, horror dawning on their faces as they absorbed the depth of his betrayal. "You deceived us at the cost of our daughter's memory," the man said, his voice low and menacing. "You will leave our house, and we will reclaim every cent spent on you. Expect to hear from our lawyers." Michael turned to me, desperation in his eyes. "Julia, please. I didn't mean for it to go this far. I can fix this." I looked at him, really looked at the man I had married, seeing him for the first time. "Fix it? Michael, it's broken beyond repair. There's nothing left to fix." As we stepped out onto the street, Michael followed, falling to his knees. "Please, Julia. I'm scared. They'll kill me if I don't pay them back." Linda stopped, turning to look at her son one last time. "You should have thought of that before you betrayed everyone who loved you." "I can't help you. Not anymore." With that, Linda walked away from her son, her steps firm. I followed, not once looking back at the man sobbing on the pavement. We got into the car, the sounds of Michael's pleading fading into the background. The morning after we drove away from that sham of a funeral, I was up early, my mind a tangled mess of betrayal and disbelief. Despite the chaos, I knew my next step was clear: I needed a lawyer. Finding out where I stood legally seemed like the only way to start untangling this mess. By 9, I was sitting across from Mr. Carlson, a no-nonsense lawyer with a reputation for getting things done. "Julia, let's start with the basics," he said, his voice steady, pulling out his glasses and a notepad. "What exactly are we dealing with?" I laid it all out, the lies, the 2 marriages, everything. When I mentioned the divorce papers Michael had supposedly filed, Mr. Carlson raised an eyebrow. Let's see those papers, if you have them. I handed over a copy. He scanned them, his frown deepening. This signature, you're saying it's not yours? Absolutely not. I never signed anything. I didn't even know he'd done this until yesterday. Mr. Carlson set the papers down, clasping his hands together. Well, that's fraud. Clear as day. We'll need to report this to the police, and we'll push for charges. As for your marriage, we can contest these documents easily. The legal gears started turning. I went from the lawyer's office straight to the police station. Explaining the situation to a sympathetic officer, I watched as she typed up the report, her keystrokes punctuating the heavy silence. Mrs. Thompson, we'll take it from here. We'll need to bring him in for questioning, she said, handing me a copy of the report. With the wheels of justice slowly grinding, I pushed forward with the divorce and sued Michael for financial compensation for the years I supported him and for the emotional wreckage he left behind. The parents of his second wife, stunned and hurt, filed their own lawsuit to claw back every penny they'd poured into Michael's lies. As the court cases dragged on, Michael's facade crumbled under the weight of evidence. He was convicted of fraud, his tears in court earning him no sympathy from the judge or anyone else he'd deceived. He ended up paying a hefty sum in compensation, scraped together from selling whatever assets he had left before he fled the country, chased by the shadows of his debts. With the money, I breathed new life into my cosmetology office, expanding it and hiring staff who shared my passion for beauty and care. It felt good, building something real and solid out of the ruins Michael left behind. Amid all this, life decided to throw me another curveball. During a routine doctor's visit, I found out I was pregnant. When I told Linda, her joy bubbled through the phone. "Oh, Julia. This is wonderful news. You, me, and that little one on the way. We're going to be just fine. And Julia, there's something else. I've updated my will. After all this, I want to make sure you and your child are taken care of." The future looked uncertain, with plenty of challenges no doubt, but as I hung up the phone, a sense of peace settled over me. Life was moving forward, and for the first time in a long while, I was ready to face it head-on, bolstered by the bonds that no deception could ever break.